Welcome back to the Elite Football Show. My name is Haider, and I'm your host as usual today. I'm delighted to be joined again by Jamie Jackson, the Manchester correspondent for The Guardian and The Observer, and very, very well-connected person when it comes to Manchester United. We've just finished the transfer window, Jamie. It was a tough one, wasn't it, for United fans?
Yeah, I would say so. And we'll obviously discuss this in depth. I'd say it's maybe a little bit more nuanced. People can make their own mind up, but I have quite a lot of information, hopefully that might explain a few things, or at least give people watching this more details for which to still make their own minds up, obviously. But yeah, it was a bit of a. It's actually interesting. I just mentioned this quickly. The piece I've just written for The Guardian that's not yet live has looked back at all of United's windows or transfer markets, if you like, since Woodward took over. It was interesting going through that, having a look at, obviously most of them in the summer, but there's the odd one in the winter. But yeah, it was another one which I'd say kind of falls into the kind of bracket of United since Ferguson left and Gill. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, look, your job's not an easy one, and that's why you're here, just to give us more of an insight. Us as fans, we only get a surface level, or we get information, maybe whether it's passed through as briefs or whether it's through agents, I suppose, but we don't really get the inside scoop. But look, I'm just going to give a fan's point of view before we start. Just before we go, just to all the listeners, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and get your comments in, because you never get an opportunity like this to speak to Jamie. He's got some great sources. So look, for me as a fan, I'm disappointed. I'm incredibly disappointed because United haven't addressed the weaknesses in their team. No matter what you say about it, bringing in, and I'm very happy with Cavani, actually. I think it's actually a through signing, but no first-team right wingers come in. A player that you chased all summer, who's been your top target. The financial package was enormous, but it was still very, very, very disappointing not to secure that. Centre-back, we've seen what we saw on the weekend. It's quite evident that United need another centre-back. Wasn't addressed. I think a defensive midfielder, I know it wasn't on the list, but again, we've got defensive problems that wasn't addressed. The left back in Tellez, I think, was a shrewd signing. He will probably slot into the first team. Good going forward. Has a few problems defensively, but definitely an upgrade. I'm delighted to see him come in. And then you obviously signed the two young lads. Van der Beek came in last time we spoke about him. Good signing. But the two young lads could be fantastic signings. I've spoken to a few people, very highly rated, but they don't fix the problem now, Jamie. And the problem is that United's first 11 needs quality. And the fans have every right, don't they, to be upset at what we've seen.
Well, of course it is. It's their club, and that's obviously their right. As fans, they're the ones who basically make the club. I mean, very quickly, going to games, it's not quite the same without fans, and so therefore, no football club really isn't a football club without fans. So of course they are. I mean, of course they should be annoyed. And I can understand it. I mean, one thing to say is, even for someone like me, obviously, there is so much a club, whether it be Manchester United, Liverpool, Burnley, Forest, who I'm a sort of lapsed fan of, whoever it might be, they can't explain everything for all sorts of reasons. But if you, just to go through some of the things you said there. So Sancho, let's start with Sancho, obviously.
Yeah, good place to start.
I'm not a fan, so I do not have any feeling here about it. So I could look at it more dispassionately. So here's what I'm wondering. Would you rather have gone for Sancho and not got him than not got him at all? And the reason why I put it that way is because there have been previous summer windows where I thought you've lacked ambition. For example, there was a summer when Dele Alli was hot. And I thought, why don't you just go for him? Even if you don't get him, it shows ambition because you're Manchester United. So with Sancho, would a fan or fans prefer never to have gone for him? Because they were genuinely interested in him. And, you mentioned the financial package there. It's been interesting today because after the story I did saying, they walked away basically because the €250 million valuation, which was
huge.
Well, and it's what I'm trying to say, Haider. There's been a little bit of reaction, of quite a lot, saying fair play to the club for walking away. Now, listen, 120 of that was the fee that Dortmund wanted, okay? I don't think they were ever going to pay that. So even if, I won't put it quite as extreme as this, but let's say the rest of the package didn't add up to 250, that would have still been a big stumbling block, the price. But the way I'm looking at it, Solskjaer really wanted the player, okay? So Woodward did all he could to, to try and make this happen. Now, maybe a different operator would have got it done somehow, but in the end, they had to get the numbers down. And a lot of the criticism is, well, why didn't they just walk away early on and look at other alternatives? Well, there's two things here. First of all, they always look at other alternatives. Okay, so for example, the ones that they looked at Dembele that never happened. For example, he would have always been on their radar. But what Woodward thought was, well, yeah, this is the price of the package. There's no way we can pay that. I mean, to be honest, even if there wasn't a coronavirus affected market and the finances of the clubs weren't hit very markedly by this, I'm not sure they would have gone for 250 million. But what he thought was, well, I could just walk away now and end it. Fair enough, whenever that might be. Let's say the August 10th deadline, which was never really a deadline. Or to keep some sort of chance, some sort of hope of this happening, why not walk away from it and just see if they might fold? And I think that was the thinking. Now, you or I can argue whether there'd be a better strategy. That was good, that was bad. But in the end, I think he tried his best. And I'm not here to defend him, but I can sort of see the thinking there, because you never know. But it didn't work, and I can understand why fans are upset. So I go back to my original point. Would they rather not be upset having never had this chase at all? I'm not so sure. Maybe you could answer that, because you're obviously a fan. But the way, as I say, I'm a Forest person. That's the score I look for. If it was a similar scenario, I personally would prefer to have to go through all the ups and downs. And I understand it actually is people's feelings. I really understand that, and it's not great, and it can be upsetting. But I'd rather be in there thinking, right, my club's showing some real ambition than not. But I do get the whole thing. Well, why didn't they just pay it? But listen, all I can go on is what I'm being told, and consistently all through this, it has been, we have lost a lot of money. Gate receipts are down. They don't think there's going to be any fans in football grounds till March. So that's what will that? That would be
massive revenue.
That'll be basically a year of revenue, right? I mean, I know there's a summer break, but you know what I mean? A full season, because
about 110 million. I mean, to count. So this is how I see it. I mean, this might be different from other fans, but I don't doubt United were interested. I don't doubt he was our top target. Completely understand. I was pretty skeptical about the deal about a month in. About a month before the end. I just thought this isn't going to happen. It's too big. My issue is the way that the club have operated on that deal. So, for example, the deadline. I know reports are coming out that wasn't a hard deadline, but I think it was pretty obvious for Dortmund that was a hard deadline. So, for me, what I don't understand is the club knew Dortmund's stance. They knew they wanted the money. So why did they wait to the end to try and drive the price down when they knew exactly what the price is? That's the first thing. Do you want to answer that?
Well,
do you want to reply to that?
Sure. Just very quickly. Basically, that deadline was kind of false, in that if on the 11th or the 15th or the August or the 1st of September, whenever, they turned around and said, here's your 220 million, and agreed the agent fees and the salary, the deal would have been done at, because I know they were still talking. I was still hearing from Germany, they were still talking, never mind from this side of the water. So sorry, go on, you had a second point.
And my second point was, look, when I saw the 250 million euros, whatever it was, I completely understood. I actually wasn't upset. It's more the fact that, like you said, you want to see that ambition, but actually as United fans, we see this every summer. We see us chase all the biggest targets. And that's the frustration, that we know Ed Woodward does this every summer. This is not a new thing that we chase our targets. We had Fabregas a few years ago. Toni Kroos was another one. Sergio Ramos. We know these situations. Look, I'd much rather United turned around and said a month ago, right, we can't afford Sancho. That's completely fine. It's COVID. We've lost 110 million off our balance sheet. This is serious stuff. We know the situation, but it's that planning piece, right? So we say Dembele was an option, but it looks like United just scrambled around. And I mean, you can obviously.
This was the other point I wanted to make. The reason why that happened, which again you can sort of question the strategy, was because they wanted to hang in there for until it was definitely dead, to give Ollie the best chance of getting the number one player he wants. They didn't want to spend any other money or go hard on any other targets.
Yeah,
and it's kind of what you're saying. Well, okay, but then really you should just make a decision on August the 10th or whenever it is, and etc. to save that scramble. And I get that, but that's the thinking. Whether that's great thinking or not, that was the reason why. So there was, from their point of view, a strategy in place there.
That makes sense. But I think going into the final day with one signing, that's crazy, Jamie. I mean, whichever way you spin it, whichever way you look at it, maybe you can get these COVID discounts, which has been thrown around, that phrase, by a few other I mean, not yourself, but a few other journalists I have spoken to. But at the end of the day, United on the surface, they could have got Cavani a couple of months ago. That to me looks like a panic buy. I think it's actually a very good signing. I'm looking forward to seeing him play. Then they've given him the number 7 shirt. I mean, it's as if you don't get your top target, and then to kick the fans in the nuts again, you've given him the number 7 shirt. That's the first thing. Secondly, buying those 2 youngsters. Why? I mean, Pellistri looks like a really good player. I've spoken to someone. It's exciting, but again, he's young. Sure. United still didn't bring in a right winger. Traore is not coming till January. They still haven't filled that position. Mason Greenwood is young. He's 18. Now, I saw you tweet earlier that someone like Sarr isn't going to come in, but is there any option of a right winger coming in? Because while United are stronger on paper, defense is still a worry. I want to talk about the defense in a bit, because I think when we last spoke, there was this idea about Koulibaly, but right wing, is Sarr going to come in, or is that definitely off the table?
As far as I've been told, today, they now have, the sort of players you would imagine who could play there, plus the 2 they brought in So no, the answer on Sarr is no, and the answer until the next window seems to be no. The only thing is there might be a free around, but I just don't see it. So of the 2 18-year-olds, Diala isn't arriving to January, and the gentleman whose name escapes me from Penarol, he is considered part of the first team squad. Listen, he's not played loads of times in sort of Uruguayan football, but what I would say, right, is the Sancho thing is a little bit of a red herring, because I think you've just touched upon it there. I think for me, centre back was all market long. In fact, really, from when Maguire started to look a little bit clumsy, pre-lockdown, let's say. I can remember being at Old Trafford. I'm not a fan, but going, crumbs, Harry, what are you doing? And this is, as I say, pre-lockdown. So it's an interesting one, because I think that people might be thinking, well, wait a minute, why were you after a right wing? Let me just jump back to the right wing a minute, because you've got Greenwood. I think he sees Greenwood really as a centre forward. Yeah, he is a centre forward. You can tell the way he plays. I consider him the best player up front already, and the one who's going to suffer maybe, or would have suffered in the end, or most under threat at first, would have been Rashford. Yeah, that's how they view it, the hierarchy. Greenwood, Martial. But so what they've done is, you're right. They've only really bought one first choice player, which is Telles, I would say. Yeah. Maybe Cavani rotating a little bit. So they strengthened the squad, but is the first team stronger? Maybe by one. That's the problem, isn't it? Yeah, no, it is. Whatever you can say, you can spin it any way you want. You can say, oh, well, we bought in for the future. But the problem with United is there's players in there. If United are basically, I think they've hit their ceiling. That's it. That's where they're at. They finished 3rd. Oli did what he had to do to get Champions League, and he's been let down completely. I understand there's other big implications. There's COVID, etc. But at the end of the day, there was players out there you could have bought for decent prices. And at the end of the day, it's criminal to be going into the season, especially after what you saw on the weekend, without at least going and testing Napoli's resolve for Koulibaly or Leipzig's resolve for Upamecano. I mean, that just boggles my mind. And for me, I mean, I'll go on to my next point after, but was there any interest in them? Was there any movement, or is he happy? Because it seems like Tuanzebe is going to be the one they're relying on, but he's been injured a lot. So his big hope was Bailly. But I mean, after the game, you just mentioned their Spurs. Listen, it's one bad performance. Yeah, I don't think he started at Old Trafford in the league for a couple of, over a year, I think it was. But there's no fans out. I don't really see why that would make a difference. He didn't play well, did he? But I mean, the only out of the back 4 who was all right was Wan-Bissaka. Really, the other 3 just got kind of taken apart.
Yeah.
I don't think a centre-back was ever seriously on the table, because, again, it goes back to the Sancho thing and what you're saying about maybe a flawed strategy, in that they put all their eggs in this basket, had a certain amount of cash they designated for him if Dortmund lowered the prices. So therefore, they couldn't be nimble enough, as you basically said in August or whatever. They said, okay, we've had enough of that. What about Koulibaly or whoever it might be? I mean, you talk about alternatives. Tarkowski might be better, for example. Even Nake. I know he went to City. A player like that in that sort of region. I don't know. But this is why the Van de Beek thing is interesting, because that money there, 35 million, more or less, would get you an Ake or a Tarkowski. Again, Van de Beek hasn't started in the league yet. He may well do. I think Pogba might be getting quite close to being dropped.
Yeah, it looks that way, doesn't it?
It's very difficult for him because everyone, I think, would agree. Maybe you won't, or some of us won't. But on their day, Pogba's the better player than Van der Beek, right? But how many of those days does he have consistently? So, yeah, I mean, on the defence, I don't really know where he goes from here because he's dropped Lindelof. Does he reinstate him after that horror show? Or does he say, right, I'm going to give you basically you same players, you same defenders?
I'll be honest, Jamie.
The place for dropping Maguire. I mean,
that's what I was going to say. His head's not in it. I mean, you obviously speak to people in the club, and there's been a bit of a debate on Twitter with some fans who say, look, mental health. He's just had a really traumatic experience in Greece. The others are saying, you know what, get on with it. You got to play. I mean, what is the sort of feeling behind the scenes? Because I know that when he came back, Ollie said, look, take some time off, but he went straight into training. He doesn't look right, Jamie, at all. He just looks awful.
The issue he's got is a little bit like when a player hits 31, 32. Every mistake he makes for that old player is seen through the prism of, he's a little bit past it. So every mistake, every bad game Maguire has is now seen through the prism of what happened when he was on the Greek island. The 2 days or 1 day he was in jail, and then, the court case and the appeal, he's saying he's not guilty, of course. It's being seen as a product of that now. And to be honest, I honestly do not know. But he's a human being, and he wouldn't be human. The only thing about it is because the appeal might be another year and a half. Listen, I'm not him, but that length of time does suggest you could maybe park it. And he is a professional. He earns a heck of a lot of money. He's captain of Manchester United. But he had an absolute shocker. So forget about whatever the reason is. If you're just judging him by what's going on the pitch, it's very difficult for him, though, Solskjaer, because and this goes to a sort of team ethic or a team unity, just a team performance. If he drops his captain, that is a big thing in the dressing room. I'm not saying he shouldn't do it, but I think for Solskjaer, it's a bit like dropping your goalkeeper, because you drop your goalkeeper. It's such a massive statement.
I think it's time to give Henderson a chance, I think he needs to revamp that whole back four. I mean, what I will say on the Maguire thing, there was a story that came out. I'm going to ask you if this is true or not. I've been told it's fake news, but we saw this going around on Instagram that Bruno had a bust up with Maguire in the changing room, and that Bruno got substituted because of that. I mean, is there any truth in that at all?
You know what? I don't know. I've not heard that. I mean, I'm sorry. I saw that rumor, whatever you want to call it, but I honestly don't know. It was a surprising substitution, that. But maybe he just figured this game is gone. What was it then? Was it 4-1 at half time?
Yeah, 4-1. And then he brought on Fred McTominay to shore it up a little bit. It seemed that way anyway. But Bruno's been playing badly as well, Jamie. He's not been playing well.
You say that, but he did create the penalty and then score it. But I just think he maybe figured, we've lost this game. I'll give him a break. I would be surprised if that happened, but I honestly don't know. I think Fernandes has got it in him, obviously, to have a go at people, including the captain, but that doesn't necessarily mean that story is true. And so I really, I haven't got a clue.
Sort of let's sort of round off the transfer business. Look, I've got a little bit of a theory here that I've been saying quite a lot over the last maybe 3 weeks. This is nothing against Ollie, but it's just the sort of feeling I'm having as a fan. That you remember that summer before Jose got sacked, where there was no movement, terrible summer of purchases just after we finished second. Obviously, we had Champions League that season. It feels to me very similar. It feels to me, and I'm going to read out something that Ed Woodward said in 2019-20. It's from the official Manchester United yearbook. Said, "We are still not where we want to be. Our aim is to always be winning trophies, but we saw plenty of evidence of the progress being made under Ollie with an exciting young team playing entertaining, attacking football." Lo and behold, that was this year. We turn around, we finished in the Champions League spot, big summer ahead, the team's playing really well, and all the energy, all the happiness just sucked out of the team. And you get a summer which is very, very, very uninspiring, just like the one Jose had. Now, the cynic in me is saying there's someone called Maurizio Pochettino out of a job who Woodward has made it very clear that he likes. And the way he operated with LVG is that he went behind his back to get Mourinho. There's nothing to stop him doing the same. The cynic in me is saying that he's waiting for Ollie to fall on his sword so that he can bring in Pochettino. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but it would not surprise me if this is going on.
Listen, all I'd say about that as a general point is that, I think all football clubs, you're always sort of monitoring how your key staff are doing. It's a bit like players, really, your manager, and, who is out there. But again, I've had a conversation about this, and I was told that is not correct. He's not interested in Pochettino, and there's no way at all that Ollie's being considered being removed. I mean, I think if you look at what happened last season, I mean, what I'm going to say here is, again, I'm not a fan, and I know you've just lost 6-1, your record equaling Premier League defeat, like the City one 2011. But I think maybe it's all a little, not you personally, but it might be painted a little bit too bleak. The guy has just finished third. I'm not sure how much higher he could have finished, last season. I don't think you're going to finish ahead of City and Liverpool. I get the point. We're now in a new season, but we are only, 3 league games. Listen, you've lost 2 games, won 1. It's not great, but I think he deserves a chance at least until Christmas. And I think what's interesting is that, I don't know. I still think I'm not sure you're going to improve on third this season, and I think that's where the frustration.
Not at all. Not with squad. Not with what other people have done, what other teams have done. I don't see. Yeah. I mean, my frustration is not at Ollie, by the way. I mean, I wanted to see him succeed. I'm furious not at Ollie. I'm furious at him because of the way we played on the weekend and we started the season poorly.
Yeah.
Preseason hasn't been there. That is a problem. I'm furious at the board because this is just, for me, history repeating itself. And at the end of the day, 4 managers in 7 years under Woodward as the CEO. I mean, when does the accountability then go upstairs? And that's the question. I mean, he's making all decisions. The manager can only do what he's got with the players. Granted, Ollie should be doing better with what he's got right out there on the pitch, because if you look at it, it's a £90 million midfielder in Pogba, 50 million Bruno, 50 million Martial, the defense 80 million Maguire, 50 million Wan-Bissaka, Bailly's 30 million, Shaw's 30 million, Matic is 40 million. There's a lot of money been spent. But at the end of the day, every manager seems to see a bit of momentum, and then the brakes are on, they're not backed, and then what happens? Maybe 3-4 months into the season, they're the one that gets sacked. Another rebuild. I mean, I know this is a very fan perspective, and I try and take myself out of that equation and try and present it more objectively. But at the end of the day, the facts are there that whenever United get into the Champions League, the investment dries up. When they're out the Champions League, they go gung-ho because they want the Champions League money. And at the end of the day, if the fans have one ambition and the owners have another ambition, you can see why the fans are frustrated. You can see a manager in Ollie that deserves to be backed to the hilt because he finished third and did what he had to do, and they haven't done that. And ultimately, if this carries on, he's the one that's going to get sacked. And ultimately, again, the vicious cycle repeats itself.
I mean, it's interesting there that you mentioned a few seconds ago about Mourinho being in a similar situation as kind of Ollie. Just qualify the Champions League. Now's the time to sort of build. And that summer, which proved to be his last, he wanted Harry Maguire, for example, and and he was denied him. And I think Boateng was another player that he wanted. And Maguire, just to take him, the feeling was from Woodward and the board and his football sort of experts in the club that he wasn't worth the money. And yet, fast forward the next summer, and they kind of pay, they pay more, I think.
Like
10 million.
Yeah.
And the other part of that assessment with regard to Maguire and Boateng was they looked at who else was at the club, centre halves. I mean, the part of this I think is a valid point. So Mourinho had also brought in Lindelof and Bailly, centre backs, and the sort of feeling was, well, wait a minute, they were out of favour last season at certain points. You basically wanted them. What's happened there? Why should we go for another? But they also thought, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but I'm just telling you that Jones, Smalling, Rojo, maybe there was one other one, but certainly those 3 actually were Maguire and Boateng any better than those. Now, I don't know, you look at Maguire now, I'm not saying he's any better or worse, but there's an argument that it is just a bit repetitive what's going on, and you do wonder what the answer is. I do honestly think that, what you're saying, if you actually look at the total spend, there has been a lot of money spent.
That's something I will come on to after, yeah.
I think it's about $1 billion since Ferguson left.
1.2 billion.
Right, that's a lot of money, right? But it's just not been spent great. I mean, to go all the way back to that very first summer under, when Moyes came in. I mean, I went back through it today as I was doing this piece I mentioned, and you started off going, and I think you mentioned Fabregas, Thiago, the guy who's now at Liverpool. Yeah. There was a double bid made. There was a double bid made for Fellaini and Baines, which totaled something like 28 million, which Everton found insulting. You know, we could go through it, and how much has it moved on since then? It probably has a little bit, but it's just that, you know, if you are a fan and you're not happy about it, I'm not too sure what else you're supposed to do other than be frustrated, because there is a pattern there.
Yeah, look, when it comes, I think the frustration is, and I think people need to remember, we have spent a huge amount, 1.2 billion. It's been spent badly. The frustration comes from several things. The first thing I would say, as a fan, the frustration comes from the way that the club was bought. I think that's the first thing. You know, the leverage buyout. At the end of the day, when you have, look, debt in business isn't a terrible thing, but when you have 750 million pounds that gone out in the last 15 years in terms of interest and on the debt, sorry, that isn't the club's debt, it's the owner's debt. That's a problem. That's 700 million that could have been put into the infrastructure, could have been put into like extending the stadium, into the surrounding areas of Old Trafford. None of that's been put. The second thing as well, that 1.2 billion is Manchester United's money that they generated. Not a single penny of that is the Glazers' money. So when you think about it, when they're taking out their 200 million in dividends, which again, for me, this might be, with some of the listeners, might be a problem, but for me, it's not a problem, because at the end of the day, 200 million to Man United is nothing, is it really? And a lot of people take out dividends. But it's the fact they haven't put any money in. Let's say, for example, Jadon Sancho was 120 million euros. Let's say Abramovich, the last 5 years, has put in 500 million into the club in low interest loans. That's something the Glazers could have done. There's clearly a massive hole in the balance sheet without fans coming in. But the fact that they haven't done that is why fans are upset. At the end of the day, we get told, right, we're going for Sancho. We're looking at this player, this player, this player. At the end of the day, not one got signed. We signed a 33-year-old who had a bad injury. I'm a big fan, but a lot of people aren't. 2 youngsters. One's not coming till January. And one of the youngsters, Diallo, 40 million euros. That's money that could have gone towards an Upamecano or Koulibaly. And then you're sitting here now and you're thinking, like, where's the strategy? And that's where we say, if they brought in a director of football, and that's why fans are so angry at Woodward, and all we can do is say Glazers out on Twitter, Woodward out, but it does nothing. And that's why we're frustrated. You finally got a manager he has got a vision. He might not be the best tactically, but he's got a vision. If he gets sacked tomorrow, all of that good work goes with him. Yeah. And then we're back at square one. And you know this, you know Ollie very well. So I think the point is that when you're looking at the whole situation, it's just beggars belief they didn't bring a director of football in, because that actually would have saved them money. Because a proper director of football would be like, don't idle him, don't buy Di Maria, he doesn't want to be here, don't buy Memphis. And they would have had, even if it was smaller purchases, but they would have been well planned. Now, director of football, that's nowhere closer to happening, is it? I mean, they're not going to bring one in, and would not be in that position. And unfortunately, when it comes to footballing decisions and we're getting things signed off, it goes straight up to Joel Glazer. So I mean, it's a mess, Jamie. I know as a fan, I'm more emotionally attached and you're more objective, but it's just a mess. And this summer's been a massive, massive disaster. It's a shambles. And I fear for Ollie this season, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I sort of have a lot of belief that team finished third and it was exhausted. And you sort of saw it in the Europa League semi-final, for example, against Sevilla. Who could he bring on? And so you could argue, and I'm going to argue, that actually with Cavani coming in, Van der Beek, now he has 2 better options off the bench. Okay, so you are a stronger squad. Therefore, you should do. And listen, you know, you look, Liverpool lost that same night, 7-2. That's unheard of. City lost. I was at that game to Leicester. I did that game. They drew with Leeds. You know, yeah. I think is it Everton and the leaders at the moment. They've won every game. It may be a little bit more wide open, which makes the losses to Palace and Spurs even more frustrating, because you could be up there with 9 points. But, you know, I don't know. What I think, I don't think, as I said before, I don't think it's as bleak. From my point of view, I don't think it's as bleak as maybe, you know, you quite rightly, it's up to you how you think, believe it is. It's just my opinion. Because you did finish third, because you've got a bright manager, because you have actually strengthened. But the expectations for United, I totally understand it. I still am baffled, I'll be honest. Basically what you just said, why wasn't the money for Van der Beek and the 2 18-year-olds just used for Sancho? Maybe it still wasn't enough, I don't know, but it just looks like, well, you know, you've ended up with neither. You've neither got a sort of a marquee player, or, okay, you could get him, but a Dembele on loan. I mean, or It's just
someone that of quality that can do the job and go slot straight into team. I mean, the second thought I've always said is, okay, fine, no Sancho, understand it's a lot of money, but go and buy a defender. And this is a point that it doesn't make sense when you're spending that money. Look, I'm happy with Van der Beek, but I just don't think that Ollie knows where he wants to play him yet. And that's a problem in itself. I don't think you can play him, Pogba, and Bruno together because that defense is a disaster behind you. So this is a thing that it's a squad which is so lopsided. There's quality in certain areas, not enough in others. And at the end of the day, surely, okay, look, you know Ollie very well. Obviously, you've written a book. How is he feeling? Because you hear certain sections of the United fan base saying, "Oh, why is he praising the owners?" Look, he's not going to go out there and have a go at them in public. But there are certain comments he does say where the club's run by good people, where he doesn't quite need to say that. But how is he? Surely he's gone behind the scenes and he's furious at what's going on.
Well, I don't know if he's furious, but I think he's disappointed. I don't think he necessarily blames the owners or Woodward for that, but I think he is disappointed because I think he obviously felt that Sancho was really going to elevate the side. I still think it's interesting this because if you get him, does it actually forestall a little bit the defensive stuff we're both agreeing on? Because attack's the best form of defense. If you're sort of blowing teams away, it's a little bit like Guardiola at City. Actually, it's all at the other end of the pitch, so it doesn't, until someone actually gets at you, finds you out. But no, I mean, I think, how can I say this? I think there's been, let me put it this way, I've got to be a little bit careful what I say. I think there's been admiration behind the scenes for how he has not even hinted at any discord. Because I think certain parts of the club, let's put it that way, could have understood if he, he's only human. Someone asked him a question, he's slightly off guard in a press conference, someone like me, someone annoying like me. I remember saying to, I can't remember exactly what the question was, something like, you wouldn't be human if you weren't frustrated. Sorry, if you weren't frustrated if Sancho didn't come, that sort of question. He didn't go there on that occasion. It's a couple of Fridays ago, but I think there is a certain view there that, he's managed to sort of not, voice a bit of disappointment. But to be honest, he's going to be disappointed because he wants the best team. I mean, I have to say that I think I said this last time. Chelsea obviously were doing two windows in one because they had a ban. Excuse me. And City, thought they were going to be out of the Champions League because of their own ban, but we're back in. But I don't know what the net spend is on United. But it's not made. For example, Telles is wiped out by Smalling, going, isn't he? More or less. So that's basically zero. So then what are you looking at?
About 35 million, probably Van der Beek, 35 million quid.
The guy from Penarol, whose name's I've really put.
Palestri,
so it's
about 8 million quid. It's nothing really.
Yeah. So it's not loads, but again, they have consistently said, well, the market's affected the club's finance, which it has. But to go back to what you say, that £750 million is a more than valid point. That you're saying with the debt and the dividends. The only thing I say about Abramovich, I understand the point you're making. I think he is streets ahead of them in terms of their personal wealth. The Glazers is, but I think they've got. To be honest, I'm not too sure. Other than Abramovich, there's much now. Well, maybe there is, but these sort of elite clubs where the owner puts in their own personal money. But listen, United generate enough money to,
self-sufficient. They don't need a rich owner.
Yeah, exactly. Just the money needs to be. But 1.2 billion is a fair spending in sort of 7 years. So I can understand why you're saying, not me, but why you're saying it's a mess, because if you look at that figure, you say, well, how the heck have you not at least challenged seriously for a title? Because not to do that in 7 years, and that's got to be a concern, because you look at what Liverpool did. No one ever imagined Liverpool, that team, when I was kind of a kid, that won everything in the 80s, would ever end up, 27 years? I'm not saying you that
30 years, yeah. No, but Jamie, it's nearly a decade. It's been 7 years.
I know.
We're nowhere near closer.
Listen, I wrote a book, this one here, 5 years ago, all about the trauma of Ferguson going, Moyes and Van Gaal. And to be honest, 5 years later, it's kind of the same story. When are you going to... You've never really challenged properly, have you? There was a season under Van Gaal where you went to Chelsea, and if you'd beaten them, you'd have been sort of closer to them, but Hazard scored, and that was the end of that. And that was basically it, really. You finished second under Mourinho, but you were 19 points behind.
So far behind, yeah. And each year, but this is a frustrating thing. So you're looking around. You got to look at it as well and looking what the other rivals are doing. Chelsea's, like you said, you can't compare to Chelsea, right? They've had transfer ban. They've technically spent 2 wins. And to be honest with you, I don't think they've spent incredibly well. They bought a lot, but again, a young manager. Let's see how that works. You're looking at Arsenal. They've bought well. Gabriel and Partey are good signings. They've got Willian as well. They've bought well. Ceballos back online. You look at Spurs. Spurs have bought very, very well. And Spurs have got a stadium debt and they spent more than United have. That's an issue. Then you look over at possibly Liverpool as well, a team that's finished 33 points ahead. And it looks like they're the ones trying to make up the gap because they went and bought a world-class player in Thiago. You're right. We never signed Thiago. We didn't seem to be interested at the wages. That's what you did say the last time I spoke to you. But then they signed Jota as well. United have, as you said, added 1 player. Now, I mean, what is the general... I mean, maybe it's difficult for you to say, but the general feeling, because, you know, like the fans are very angry, and we got told maybe 2 weeks ago that your anger is having a negative effect on the club. And as a fan, how dare you say that? Because for 7 years, you haven't put footballing men in footballing positions. You've spent the money badly, mismatch of managers. You've had 4 different managers with different styles, and you haven't really backed them when it matters. Now, do the Glazers, does Woodward know how angry the fans are? Can they not see? Do they care? I mean, I know it's difficult for you to say. You can't say something which obviously
Woodward definitely cares, and he will know. And he's, you know, all levels understand there is a lot of disquiet. But you know, I think this idea that Woodward doesn't care, it isn't correct. You know, I know he does. I mean, you know, the guy had his house attacked, which I'm not sure anyone thinks is awful. Basically, you know, if you think that's a good idea, then I'm sorry, you're not really a fan. You know, you're just not a nice person. Basically, he didn't deserve that. But at the same time, I understand if fans are upset with the way it's gone, because it must be so frustrating when you just to go back to Sancho. You know, as someone who writes about the club, who loves seeing brilliant players, I'm thinking, oh, please get him, because it's going to be great to write about, you know, just to see him play football, you know, for a club here in England. So if you're fans, you know, it must be driving you sort of crazy, because he's there, he wants to come. But I have to say, when I was, you know, when I realised the £250 million figure, that's a heck of a lot of money.
It's too much to spend, really, Jamie.
But as you basically said, maybe, and you know, it's Solskjaer who's driving Sancho. Maybe he should never have gone after Sancho in the first place. Maybe it should have been what you were sort of saying, a centre back. You know, it'd be interesting to see. You know, a few people ask me, do you think they'll go back in for him? Who knows? That was my next question. Yeah, you know, is he still? Why would they not? But who knows where we're going to be? Let's say in the January window, which is probably unlikely because it's January, but you never know. Or next summer. I mean, Liverpool are interested. I know that for a fact. Yeah, so, you know.
Yeah, I mean, who are the other clubs? Because they said today, well, I mean, that's the worry, isn't it?
The only one I know, definitely, it was told to me from basically the Sancho side was Liverpool. But obviously, that wasn't going to happen this summer. Now, whether they could... You know, I'm hearing Liverpool fans are upset that they didn't get a centre-back. They think Gomez is not great. But, you know, they just lost 7-2, so I understand that. But what I'm saying about Sancho is, I understand the frustration, because what I keep on going back to is, okay, 250 million is a heck of a lot of money, but if you got him for 10 years,
exactly,
you know, 5 million a year, I don't know.
Exactly.
You know, you should make money on him with rights, and you know what I mean, commercial.
It was a footballing, as one of my good friends Paulie says, it's a footballing for Solskjaer and a commercial wet dream for think about the marketing opportunities, and that's what I don't understand. Like, at the end of the day, this is a question that gets leveled at us. Would you rather just had Sancho bought these other players? But at the end of the day, I find it embarrassing, because all summer he was our first choice. All summer we were the only team in for him, and to not sign him. And to be honest with you, Jamie, for me, I think it was a now or never signing. I don't think he signs. I think Liverpool's a big potential destination. Maybe PSG, one of the Spanish too, if they sell a few players. I mean, I just think United have missed a trick. And I mean, what was the feeling from Sancho's camp?
Just throw this at you a little bit. Maybe you'd agree. If you say, right, let's forget about Sancho, and you get someone in who you think is brilliant enough to be in your first team in that position and is going to make you better. Is that fine? Because what I'm getting at is, if you could do that, I don't think not getting Sancho is the end of the world. But then I'm not a fan, you see, so I'm not quite. I'm looking at it more dispassionately, and I'm thinking, well, if actually, I mean, I don't know who it would be, but if you could get a brilliant player,
that's fine with me. That's the thing. It didn't necessarily have to be Sancho. I mean, I've got questions here from Kieran. He's saying anyone we're interested in the Championship. When we covered Saar, that doesn't look like you spoke to someone today. There's no interest there, is there?
No, there's not, because as I say, they think they've just brought in. Don't shout at me, it's not me, but this is what the club said. They just brought in 2 more right wingers. The 18, well, one is coming in now, one in January. The 18-year-olds. They've got all these other players, Dan James, etc. So beyond that, no. I mean, there's potentially some interesting free. I noticed Goetze, the guy who scored the winner for Germany in the World Cup finals, a free agent. There's a few like that. I'm not saying you would go for him, but I'm just wondering. I really don't see that. So I don't see any.
Hold on, Jamie, you just cut out there. Could you repeat that?
Yeah.
Could you repeat that? You just cut out.
I was just basically saying that I don't think there will be anyone in the Championship that they, United will go for. Saar was the obvious one.
No Brooks.
I was told no way.
No David Brooks, no Josh King.
Never say never, but I don't think so. You never know. You never know. I've got to say that. You never know.
I think the massive problem is that, as you said, yes, Sancho, but if United had bought in a right winger, they'd addressed other areas, I think fans would be fine. It's just the fact that it's a glaring issues. And look, let's quickly talk about Sancho's intentions. I mean, did Sancho really want to join as well? Because reports are saying he was ready to do it.
You tell me. I was told he wanted to come, but he didn't agitate. But then players don't necessarily agitate because they lose their signing on fee. That what is it, 10% of a transfer? So I don't know. I'm not so sure that he should have necessarily agitated. I think listen, he wanted to go to United, but there's wanting to, he certainly didn't push it as far as he could. But maybe he's playing for Dortmund. He's enjoying himself over there. He's in the England squad, although he's not at the moment because of the Ben Chilwell party thing. Yeah, I think I don't think it would have continued on for so long if Sancho. But I mean, again, I'm told that Dortmund recommended to United, look, speak to the player and his agent. I think it's a guy called Abassi, his last name. So therefore they always knew what United, basically the figures that United could afford to pay. They were hearing what Sancho wanted in terms of the wages and the agent's fee. United respect the fact that they had a figure, just like they respect the fact Dortmund had a figure. It just wasn't. I mean, I don't think there was ever a formal bid. The thing is about this, you could say there's never a formal bid, but you don't really need. You only really make a formal bid once you think this is on. And the first one you're going at isn't the one that you're going to end up. So what I mean. So you don't really bother doing it. Yeah. But listen, it's not a great. It's kind of reminiscent of quite a few of their other summer windows. I'm afraid to say. Going back through the records, do you remember the one where David De Gea was going to go to Real Madrid, but the facts? There's always thing about facts. Do you remember that? Real Madrid, United, and vice versa. There's one where Ramos said he wanted to come up and then got a new contract.
Even under Herrera, remember they sent those 3 lawyers over to him. Look, United. Look, it's difficult, Jamie, because look, where I'm coming at, the angle I'm coming at as a fan. Our grievances aren't with the manager. I mean, there are people with grievances with the manager, but that's to do with tactics. They don't think he's good enough. That's a different conversation for another time. But as fans, we can see plain and it's clear. Even looking at Jose Mourinho, he wasn't the problem because, yes, okay, Jose can be Jose. He can be maybe a difficult character. As you said last time, look, the club was an unhappy place, and it isn't like that now, is it? I mean, even after that loss, because some part of me and some other fans have said that it seems like these players have put, I guess, thrown in the towel under Jose. It didn't look like they were trying very hard on the weekend. Is there always that worry that these group of players have done it before? They can throw the manager under the bus again. I mean, is it a happy camp? Are the players playing for him?
Yeah, it is a happy camp, and I'd also say that it's not exactly the same group of players. He's got rid of quite a few. I mean, the question I wanted to ask you, and maybe this is heresy, even just to ask you. There's no way you would ever consider not being a fan of United because of all this unhappiness that it's causing you. No,
not at all.
But this is the beautiful thing about fans, but also the thing where clubs have it quite sweet, and I'm under egging it because they have this unbelievable loyalty for fans, which, you know, they can always sort of count on, no matter what, because that's what you just basically said, no matter what they do. And that's why all fans have every right to be as angry or frustrated, you know, because what do they give back? They give back this undying, you know, just to see the reaction on Twitter to something that you tweet about. What was it today? Oh, yeah, just about the SAR thing, sort of saying.
Yeah, I saw the comments. They weren't very nice.
But people care so much, and that's great to see.
Yeah.
And so it is, you know, for me, it is. I would love to see United win the title. You know, just for because of this, just because of how much the fans kind of deserve it. Because it is, you know, you go away with United. Very quickly, I took my son, who is a United fan, to an away game. It was a friendly. It was Wigan. It was Mourinho's first game as manager. We went in the away section. He was only about 4 then. It was about 4 years ago. And wow, the United fans were just
the best in the land.
It won't be news to you, but I've never done it before because obviously I'm not a fan. Yeah. And I was just like, well, this is, I can see that. And this is for Wigan away in a friendly, you know, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, as Kieran says here, and this is how I feel. I mean, look, Jamie, I've done about 4 podcasts since I've spoken to you, so they've all the anger's sort of drained out. But he said here, like I said before, it's more worrying when people are apathetic instead of angry, and that's the problem. You know, I'll tell you now on deadline day, at deadline day, I just felt so deflated. I wasn't even angry anymore. I just felt, you know what it feels like as fans? It feels like that it's not our club anymore, and the ownership, the board, they don't care, because if they cared, I mean, have you ever had an interview with the Glazers? Have you ever had the opportunity to speak to them? No.
I think that's a problem on the record since they took over.
What to the Glazers once?
Well, not me, but just generally, I think they've spoken publicly once.
When they took over. Yeah.
In fact, I think they were even quoted at the time that we want to communicate with the I think there was even some quote that said that basically, and it's never happened. That I think is not great. And I'm being polite.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's why we're frustrated, because, and like you said, it's as Kieran says, apathy now. It's not even anger. Years ago it was anger, but now it's expected. And as fans now, we're sitting there, and Jadon Sancho is not a surprise to me, and it's not even a surprise that we didn't address those positions that we needed to. I guess it's deflation, and we know this story again and again. It's been 7 years, and look, I know it might sound very defeatist and pessimistic, but I just don't see how Ollie lasts the season with this squad, because you've got Arsenal, Chelsea, PSG coming up, one injury to the one of the front three, one injury to one of the midfielders, and that's United's season done. And what can he do? I mean, you know,
you don't think Cavani then comes in for one of those injured?
He does, but let's say it's a right winger. I mean, who plays on that right wing? You're going to ask an 18-year-old from Uruguay? Dan James isn't good enough. Not good enough. I'm not to be okay. Look, here's a question. Let's talk about outgoings quickly before we end, because obviously you can provide some. The Chris Smalling deal. I mean, a lot of reports coming out from Roma's side that United acted in quite a distasteful way. They were changing the goalposts. I mean, United can't sell a player, can they? We had Jones, Rojo, Pereira's out, obviously on loan. But what's the issue there? The mentality that it's cheaper to keep a player than to buy a new one?
I think the issue is quite simple. Listen, in terms of distasteful stuff, I've not heard anything about that, so I'm not going to comment on that. But I think the issue is they pay so much that it's difficult to then, sell a player, because why a player's reluctant, and again, that's that you could say, I'm not saying this, but you could say that this is the club mismanaging. I mean, I think this is a bit of a fait accompli. Jones signed a new contract when Solskjaer was there, but I'm pretty sure he was temporary, or if not, it was basically kind of had. I don't think he necessarily beat down the door of Woodward and said, "Look, we've got to do this." But that wasn't great, because now Jones is, he's injured. And I mean, I remember actually asking a question of Ollie about the Jones thing, sort of saying, look, all respect to Phil, but unfortunately he's injured a lot. Why have you done this, in essence? And I can't remember how he answered it. But that's the issue. And I think that's one of the things they're trying to weed out. And that's why I was interested about this Sancho thing, because if you take that 250 million, right, figure, and then you take the 120 away that Dortmund wanted, right? So that's 130 million euros, which is about 120 million quid left. If you do the maths on that, the wage and player agent demand is massive, and so you could have. I think could they not afford it, but what would that have done? It's a bit like the Sanchez thing, not quite as much, but I worked it out. If I'm about right, that let's say the agent gets 20 million, that's what he was demanding. right?
Is that what he was demanding? Yeah, that's quite a lot, isn't it?
Well, Sancho himself would be on the thick end of 400 a week, which, listen,
Pounds.
Yeah. If you do the maths, after this show, do the maths on it. I mean, that's I'm saying that's if the agent gets 20, if he gets less than so. But so what I'm saying is that's a lot of money, and I think there was a concern, a bit like Sanchez, and a bit like what was said about Jones and Smalling. It's up to them, fair play, if they're getting that money, but for all sorts of reasons, we can't offload them if they back. I mean, the Sanchez thing was a disaster. You can make it a claim for it being the work, but at the time, I thought not the wages, but I thought that was actually a good deal. Mkhitaryan goes the other way. They do. It was that unlucky.
It's hindsight, though, isn't it? I mean, look, it's at the time that was a good deal, but then also at the time, Jose should have played them on the right. So that was also a managerial thing. Rashford and Martial are doing fantastically on the left. Why did you displace both of them while they were going, neck and neck for that position? But I mean, look, here is Kieran's comment. Again, you don't need to answer it, I know, obviously, but you're looking at Ed Woodward, 7 years, 4 managers, 3 sacked. Never know what happens with this one. In any other job, let's just take yourself out of football. Or even in football, if you'd had a reign of 7 years, 4 managers, they've all failed. You spent 1.2 billion badly of your boss's money. How are you still in a job? Because look, I'm going to push you to this angle, because the objectives aren't football objectives; they're commercial objectives. United are hitting their commercial objectives off the pitch, so Ed Woodward stays in the job. I mean, it's clear as day to see, and I don't know why fans are surprised at what we've seen this window.
Well, I mean, basically everything you just said, and I think it's a good point there about the general manager moving on 5 to 7 years generally. But these are all stuff that the Glazers would be great to ask them. Occasionally, just in case, I do make a request. Is there any chance of speaking to one of them? And it's interesting. The on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and in America. Yeah. And I remember speaking to a local Tampa journalist a few years ago, basically saying the only time they ever get to speak to them is in some sort of American NFL thing each year, in which they almost they don't have to, but they'll get them for sort of 10 minutes, and that's it. And that's in America, the home country, where it's not quite as the disaffection is not quite as strong. But these are all things. Yeah, that the Glazers really, I think, they should. I don't think it would hurt if they had they could do it remotely now by Zoom. They don't have to, inverted commas, face fans if there's some sort of, I'm not saying that there is or there should be, but if there's some sort of wariness about that, and just take some questions. I think you would respect that, even if you don't particularly like what they've done to your club and blah blah blah. You would respect the chance, wouldn't you? You'd say fair enough. At least I've been fronted up to these people who own my club. And to be fair to Woodward, he has tried to do that. He does. Is it the fans forum? He speaks to Andy Mitten a little bit with his United We Stand.
Yeah, he does.
Trying to get it out there to the fans, answer some questions. And Andy does, sort of good job asking him questions. So, but this dialogue thing, I think, is so important. I mean, it just is. The communication isn't great. If I was advising the Glazers, I'd be saying, look, it's up to you, obviously, but I think it would actually help in the long run the club. It would create more warmth, more engagement. Yeah, you're going to be criticised, but that's part that just that comes with the territory sort of thing. But I'm obviously not advising them.
I'm just surprised that they haven't even spoken to any journalist as well. I mean, obviously the first time, I'm surprised that even they don't speak to media. I mean, to me it seems like they don't care, and at the end of the day, the club makes money. And we as fans can shout and scream and do what we want on Twitter. And that does nothing, Jamie. Saying hashtag Glazers out does nothing. The only way that it's going to work is if in the stadium. Remember the game at Burnley? Was it the Burnley game where they were singing about putting Ed Woodward and the Glazers on a bonfire? Do you remember that? Were you at that game?
Yes.
Yeah. So this was just before Bruno signed. And that seemed to cause a little bit of difference. But look, last question. So is this United's business done then? Is there nothing really on the horizon?
Never say never, but I would be surprised now. Yeah, I would be surprised. Yeah, I'm afraid that's the answer.
No problem at all. Jamie, just tell the listeners about your your book. I believe is it released yet, or it is being released soon?
It's out on the 29th of October. It's called The Red Apprentice. It's about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. It's a biography of obviously him from sort of, when he was a kid, growing up in Kristiansund, where he's from in Norway, all the way through his career and life, up until basically the end of last season, which, to end on a happy note, you did finish third, on the very final day of the season. And that's basically the happy ending. But hopefully there's lots of stuff in there that will, people might not necessarily know about him, which is the idea of a biography. So hopefully, it will be an interesting read. Whatever you think about him as a manager, I think he's had an interesting life and football career, both as a player for your club and as a manager. So, that's hopefully an attraction.
One last question, Jamie, before we run out. But a lot of people think he's a soft touch. Can you dispel that sort of view on him? Because you've spoken to him many times.
He's not a soft. He's a very nice man, but probably like you and I, most people who are watching this or listening to this, he knows there's a certain line, and if you disrespect him or if you're not doing what you should be doing, he's steely. He's steely. I always say he wouldn't have prospered in that great United side. All right, he wasn't a first choice, but he was still a very key part of that team. He wouldn't have prospered without having a hard edge, without being driven and he's also smart, and smart people know when to, when it's time to sort of put the foot down, when it's time not to. So no, he's not a soft touch. I understand why he can maybe be characterized like that, but actually I think sometimes it's braver and shows a little bit more originality to not feel you have to be, moody and sullen in front of the camera. He's a bit of a class act, really. I think, with regard to the way he carries himself. So no, he's not a soft touch at all.
Absolutely brilliant. What we'll do, Jamie, is we'll put the press release when we release this and post out the podcast tomorrow. But thank you very much, mate, for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure as always. And to all the listeners, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, check out Jamie's book, and we will see you next time.